At my daughter's beach wedding, her fiancé smirked, "Pay $50,000 for this luxury or vanish forever." I blinked. My daughter added, "Or enjoy solitude in an old age home." I sipped champagne, smiled, and whispered, "You forgot one thing." Their faces turned pale. Moments later, chaos erupted, and I never lifted a finger. "You forgot one thing." These words slipped from my lips like velvet-wrapped daggers, barely audible above the rhythmic crashing of waves against the pristine Cape Cod shoreline. The champagne in my hand caught the golden light of sunset as I raised it to my lips, maintaining eye contact with my daughter and her new husband. I hadn't planned to say it. Not yet. But watching Rebecca's perfectly made-up face transform from cold disdain to momentary uncertainty gave me a flicker of satisfaction I hadn't anticipated. Just 3 hours earlier, I'd arrived at the Ocean View Resort alone, my taxi pulling up to the grand entrance where valets in crisp white uniforms assisted guests from luxury vehicles. The driver, sensing my hesitation, had offered me an encouraging smile. "Beautiful place for a wedding," he'd commented, helping me with my single overnight bag. Yes, I'd managed, smoothing down my department store dress, the nicest one I owned, a pale blue number I'd splurged on after 6 months of setting aside tip money. My daughter's getting married. The pride I'd tried to infuse in those words fell flat as I stepped onto the manicured grounds. Immaculate white chairs adorned with lavish floral arrangements faced the ocean. Crystal glasses caught the sunlight, creating prisms across the professionally decorated tables. Women in designer dresses mingled effortlessly, their laughter tinkling like the champagne being poured into flutes worth more than my weekly grocery budget. A tall woman with unnaturally smooth skin glanced at me, her eyes performing a quick assessment. I watched her gaze travel from my face down to my sensible heels, lingering momentarily on my handbag. Not a designer piece but the best I could afford. Her slight grimace told me everything I needed to know before she turned away, dismissing me without a word. I clutched my invitation tighter, scanning the crowd for my daughter. Rebecca had insisted I arrive early to help with last-minute details, yet no one seemed to be expecting me. After 15 minutes of awkward wandering, I spotted her in a white silk robe, surrounded by bridesmaids in a secluded area of the garden. "Mom, you're late," she said instead of hello, barely looking up from her phone. Her voice carried the slight edge it had developed sometime during her junior year of college. "Everyone's been asking where you were." A lie, of course. No one had been looking for me. "The ceremony starts in 2 hours, she continued, finally meeting my eyes. "Your dress is fine. Just try not to embarrass us today, okay?" The words stung more than they should have. After all, this wasn't new territory. I nodded, forcing a smile as she instructed a wedding coordinator to show my mother to her seat. "For the ceremony?" I asked, confused. "For the reception," Rebecca clarified with a sigh that suggested I was being particularly slow. "You're at table 19. It's in the back corner, away from where we'll be taking family photos." The coordinator, a young woman with kind eyes, gave me a sympathetic glance as she led me away. "Would you like something to drink while you wait, Mrs. Foster?" "Grace," I corrected automatically. "And yes, maybe some water." 2 hours later, I watched my beautiful daughter walk down the aisle toward David Harrington, scion of a Boston real estate empire. Rebecca was radiant in a designer gown that had cost more than 3 months of my rent. I'd offered to help pay for her dress, but she'd laughed, saying, "Mom, you couldn't afford the veil, let alone the gown." During the ceremony, I sat alone in the second-to-last row, surrounded by distant acquaintances and work colleagues who chatted among themselves, not bothering to introduce themselves to the mother of the bride. I didn't cry when they exchanged vows. Something had hardened inside me months ago, calcifying with each small rejection. The cocktail hour was in full swing when David approached me, 2 champagne flutes in hand. At first, I felt a flicker of hope, perhaps a gesture of family connection. "Grace," he said with that practiced smile that never reached his eyes. "Enjoying yourself?" "It's a beautiful wedding," I answered carefully, accepting the champagne. "You and Rebecca must be very happy." "We are," he agreed, glancing around to ensure no one was within earshot. "Though there's still the matter of your contribution to discuss." I froze, the flute halfway to my lips. "My contribution?" "Yes," David continued smoothly, his voice maintaining that charming cadence he used with everyone. "Rebecca mentioned you'd be helping with the final wedding costs. $50,000 should cover it. The champagne suddenly tasted bitter. $50,000? David, I don't have that kind of money. His smile never faltered, but something cold entered his eyes. Grace, let's be honest. We've accommodated your situation as best we could. But appearances matter in our circles. Rebecca's embarrassed enough by your background. The least you could do is compensate for the inconvenience. Inconvenience? I repeated, stunned by his audacity. There you two are. Rebecca appeared at David's side, her wedding dress catching the sunset's glow. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale, one who had forgotten her humble beginnings. Mom, has David talked to you about our arrangement? He mentioned something about $50,000, I said quietly. Rebecca's smile remained fixed, her voice dropping to a whisper. It's not much considering what we've done for you. We invited you despite David's parents' reservations. We gave you a seat at the reception. If you can't contribute financially, perhaps it's best we go our separate ways. What are you saying? I asked, although I already knew. I'm saying there's a lovely retirement community in Arizona where you wouldn't bother anyone, she replied coolly. Your choice. Pay for the luxury of being in our lives or vanish forever. It's really quite simple. I looked between them, my daughter and her new husband, standing before me like royalty addressing a peasant. 18 years of sacrifice, 3 jobs at once to put her through college, my retirement fund poured into her boutique. All forgotten. Something settled inside me then. A calm certainty. I sipped my champagne slowly, letting the moments stretch. Then I looked directly into their confident faces and whispered, "You forgot one thing." The flash of fear that crossed their expressions was unmistakable. They hadn't expected defiance. "Excuse me," I said, rising gracefully. "I need to powder my nose." As I walked away, I could feel their eyes boring into my back. They had no idea what was coming, what I had been preparing for months. The chaos that would erupt would be entirely of their making. And I wouldn't have to lift a finger. As I walked away from Rebecca and David, my heels clicking against the polished stone path leading to the resort's main building, memories flooded through me, not of my daughter's wedding day, but of another night 18 years ago when I made the most important decision of my life. Rain had pounded against the windows of our small Boston apartment as I pressed my trembling fingers against my swollen cheek. Tom had finally fallen asleep after his latest rage, his snores echoing through our 2-bedroom unit like distant thunder. 4-year-old Rebecca had witnessed it all from the hallway, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, tears streaming silently down her face. She'd already learned that making noise during Daddy's bad times only made things worse. That was the moment everything changed. Not because it was the worst beating, it wasn't, but because of the look in my daughter's eyes. Understanding. Recognition. The beginning awareness that this was what love looked like. I moved with terrified precision that night, packing only essentials into a single duffel bag. Rebecca's favorite clothes, her rabbit, our passports, and the emergency cash I'd been hiding inside a hollowed-out copy of Pride and Prejudice for months. $237. All I had managed to squirrel away from grocery money and the meager allowance Tom permitted me. When I lifted a sleeping Rebecca from her bed, her tiny arms instinctively wrapped around my neck. "Are we going on an adventure, Mommy?" she'd whispered. "Yes, baby," I'd answered, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. "The biggest adventure." We disappeared into the rainy night, boarding the last bus to Dorchester where my former high school friend Maggie had promised we could stay until I figured something out. 2 weeks later I found the apartment, if you could call it that. A single bedroom with a kitchenette and bathrooms so small you could brush your teeth while sitting on the toilet. The building smelled perpetually of cabbage and cigarette smoke, but the landlord didn't ask questions when I paid 3 months' rent in advance with my first paychecks. The pull-out couch in the living area became my bed for the next 7 years. Each night I would unfold it after tucking Rebecca into the bedroom, my back protesting after 10-hour shifts at Sonny's Diner where I served breakfast and lunch. After a quick shower and meal, I'd change into my professional clothes, a navy skirt and white blouse I found at Goodwill, and head to Dr. Miller's dental practice where I answered phones until 9. But between those exhausting hours were golden moments that made every sacrifice worthwhile. I still remember Rebecca's face the first time she read a complete sentence from the second-hand books I'd bring home. The cat sat on the mat. "I did it, Mommy. I read it all by myself," she'd exclaimed, her eyes widening with pride and wonder. You're the smartest girl in the world, I'd told her, meaning every word. We celebrated life's small victories with grocery store cupcakes. $2.99 for a pack of 6 that we'd carefully divide over several days. When Rebecca lost her first tooth, when she got all A's on her report card, when she was chosen for the elementary school spelling bee, each milestone marked with the ritual of choosing which color frosting we wanted that week. One day, I promised her as we sat at our wobbly kitchen table, you'll have every opportunity one never had. You'll go to college, you'll wear beautiful clothes, you'll never worry about having enough. Will you be there too, Mommy? She'd asked, blue frosting smeared across her upper lip. Always, I'd promised. I kept that promise through middle school and high school, through Rebecca's awkward phases and triumphs. I started putting aside money for college when she was 10, opening a dedicated savings account where I deposited whatever I could. Sometimes just $5 a week, sometimes more when I picked up extra shifts during holidays. The day the acceptance letter from Boston University arrived, Rebecca danced around our small apartment, the prestigious letterhead clutched in her hands. I got in, Mom. I really got in. That night, after she'd fallen asleep, I cried for the first time in years. Tears of pure pride mixed with panic about the tuition costs that her partial scholarship wouldn't cover. By morning, I had a plan. In addition to the diner and dental office, I took on weekend inventory work at a local department store and started cleaning houses for wealthy families in Back Bay twice weekly. My schedule became a blur of uniforms, bus routes, and quick naps between shifts. On weekends when Rebecca would visit from her dorm, I'd hide the bone-deep exhaustion behind bright smiles and freshly dyed hair to cover the increasing gray. Mom, you look great, she'd say, and I'd feel a surge of relief that she couldn't see the truth. That some nights I was so tired I'd fall asleep still wearing my shoes. The change was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. During her freshman and sophomore years, Rebecca would bring her laundry home on weekends, and we'd talk for hours about her classes, her new friends, her dreams for the future. She'd proudly introduce me to her roommates when they occasionally accompanied her, describing my multiple jobs with admiration. My mom works harder than anyone I know. But something shifted during her junior year. She started coming home less frequently. When she did visit, she'd often be on her phone, texting friends or checking social media. The first time she seemed embarrassed by me was when her new friend Alyssa, a girl from a wealthy Connecticut family, came to our apartment. "This is cozy," Alyssa had commented, her eyes taking in our mismatched furniture and the damp spot on the ceiling that the landlord had promised to fix for months. "We're moving soon," Rebecca had lied quickly. "Mom just hasn't had time to look at new places." Later that night, after Alyssa had gone back to campus, Rebecca suggested that perhaps it would be easier if she just stayed at school on weekends. "The library has better resources for my business classes anyway," she'd explained, not quite meeting my eyes. I nodded, swallowing the hurt. "Whatever helps you succeed, sweetheart." I didn't tell her that I'd already been planning to pick up a 6th shift at the diner on Saturdays. Her success was all that mattered, even if the path to it gradually took her away from me. Rebecca graduated with honors, her business degree from Boston University opening doors I never dreamed possible for my daughter. I sat in the audience during the ceremony, cheeks aching from smiling so hard, watching her confidence stride across the stage. My hands were raw from extra shifts, the skin cracked and reddened from cleaning chemicals, but I wore gloves to hide them as I applauded louder than anyone. 2 weeks after graduation, my phone rang at 11:43 p.m., just as I was collapsing into bed after a double shift. "Mom." Rebecca's voice trembled on the line. "Are you awake? I need to talk to you." I sat up immediately, sleep forgotten. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Are you okay?" "I found it, Mom," she said, words tumbling out between sniffles. "My dream. My purpose." She explained how she'd stumbled upon a vacant storefront in an up-and-coming corner of Beacon Hill. The space was small but had character. Exposed brick walls, original hardwood floors, and large windows perfect for displays. The landlord had given her a tour and mentioned how the area was attracting young professionals and fashion-conscious residents. "I could open my own boutique," she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. "Curated pieces for professional women. Unique items you can't find at department stores. I've already started contacting small designers." "That sounds wonderful," I said, genuinely excited for her vision. Then came the real reason for her call. But I need startup capital. The landlord wants first and last month's rent plus security deposit by next week to hold the space. And then there's renovation, inventory, marketing. Her voice cracked. I don't have that kind of money, Mom. No bank will loan to someone fresh out of college with no business history. I closed my eyes, knowing instantly what I would do. How much do you need? Mom, I don't expect you to. How much, Rebecca? There was a pause before she answered, $97,000. The figure might as well have been $1 million. It was far more than I had in my savings account. But there was my retirement fund. Modest by most standards but religiously contributed to for 18 years. It was everything I had managed to set aside for my future. I'll have it for you by Monday, I promised. Her gasp was audible. Mom, how? That's everything you have. Not everything, I said softly. I have you. 3 days later I sat in Sarah Miller's office, my high school friend who had become a paralegal at a respected Boston law firm. I'd helped her through a difficult divorce years ago, letting her sleep on my pull-out couch for 3 months when she had nowhere else to go. Are you absolutely certain about this, Grace? Sarah asked, pushing her glasses up on her nose as she reviewed the paperwork for liquidating my retirement account. This is every penny you've saved. I'm certain, I replied. Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line. Then we're doing this my way. She pulled out additional documents. I'm drawing up partnership papers. You'll maintain 51% silent ownership. Rebecca will be the face of the business, but you'll have legal protection. I started to protest, but Sarah held up her hand. This isn't just about protecting you, Grace. It's about protecting Rebecca too. What if the business fails? What if there are liability issues? This creates a legal structure that safeguards both of you. Reluctantly, I agreed, though I never intended to exercise any control over Rebecca's dream. When we presented the paperwork to her, she signed without fully reading it, too excited about securing the storefront to pay much attention to legal details. Rebecca's closet opened 3 months later. The grand opening was modest. A small cheese platter, inexpensive champagne, and handwritten invitations to everyone in Rebecca's network. I stood in the background watching my daughter greet potential customers with natural charm, showcasing the carefully selected inventory with genuine passion. The boutique struggled for the first few months. I quietly contributed more from my savings when rent came due, never mentioning the additional support. Rebecca worked 14-hour days, designing window displays late into the night, negotiating with vendors and building relationships with customers one sale at a time. Then came the miracle. Alyssa, Rebecca's college friend, the one who had found our apartment cozy, had become something of a social media lifestyle influencer. She visited the store one afternoon, tried on a striking blue dress Rebecca had sourced from an unknown Brooklyn designer, and posted a photo to her Instagram account. By morning, the post had gone viral in Boston social circles. By afternoon, there was a line outside the boutique. By the end of the week, Rebecca had sold through nearly all her inventory and was frantically calling suppliers for rush orders. Rebecca's closet became the fashion destination for Boston's young professionals. Local magazines featured it in their hidden gems sections. More social media influencers came, posted, and spread the word. Within 6 months, Rebecca was looking to expand into the vacant space next door. I watched it all unfold with overwhelming pride. My daughter, my brilliant, hardworking daughter, was succeeding beyond anything I had imagined when I fled with her in the night all those years ago. I deliberately stayed away during business hours, only visiting after closing to help with restocking or accounting. Rebecca never asked me to stay away. It was my choice, understanding instinctively that her sophisticated clientele might see my presence, with my discount store clothes and work-worn hands, as inconsistent with the boutique's upscale image. You should come by during the day sometime, Rebecca said occasionally, but her tone lacked conviction. Your world now, not mine, I'd respond lightly. I'm happy just seeing the results. The first real sting came unexpectedly about a year after opening. I had stopped by earlier than usual one evening, planning to surprise Rebecca with dinner after a particularly successful week. The boutique was still open, customers browsing the new fall collection. I slipped in quietly, standing near a circular rack of cashmere sweaters. A well-dressed woman was chatting with Rebecca near the register, admiring the store's aesthetics. You've created something special here, the woman commented. How did you manage to build such a perfect boutique right out of college? I smiled, waiting to hear Rebecca acknowledge the partnership, the support, the years of sacrifice that had made her dream possible. Instead, my daughter tossed her hair back confidently and replied, I built this business from nothing. Just hard work, determination, and a clear vision. Nobody handed me anything. I made it happen through pure grit. The words hit me like physical blows. Nobody handed me anything. I built this from nothing. In that moment, standing among expensive clothes purchased with my retirement fund, I became invisible in my daughter's narrative, erased completely from her success story. The boutique that had been intended as the culmination of our journey together had become hers alone. I backed away silently, dinner plans forgotten, and slipped out the door before Rebecca could see me. Outside, leaning against the brick wall of the building, I took deep breaths of the cool evening air, trying to rationalize away the hurt. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? For Rebecca to stand on her own, confident and successful? But as I walked home alone that night, something fundamental shifted in my understanding of our relationship. It wasn't just that she had claimed sole credit for the boutique success. It was that she truly believed it. After discovering Rebecca's revisionist history of her success, I maintained my distance from the boutique operations, protecting myself from further disappointment while still quietly ensuring the business thrived. 4 months, I reviewed the financial statements Sarah forwarded me, attended to paperwork and processed invoices from behind the scenes, becoming a ghost in my daughter's success story. Then came the invitation, a rare occurrence that caught me off guard. Mom, the Boston Chamber of Commerce is hosting their annual Small Business Networking Gala next Thursday, Rebecca announced during one of our increasingly infrequent dinners together. I'm being recognized as one of their entrepreneurs under 30, and I need a +1. Would you come with me? Surprise must have registered on my face because Rebecca quickly added, the other option is Alyssa, but she's been to the last 3 events with me and people are starting to think we're a couple. She laughed lightly. I'd love to come, I said, trying to mask my eagerness. Perhaps this was Rebecca's way of rebuilding our connection. The night of the gala, I splurged on a hair appointment and wore my best outfit, a navy blue dress from Nordstrom Rack that I'd purchased on clearance but looked considerably more expensive. When Rebecca picked me up, she gave me an appraising look. You look nice, Mom, she said with mild surprise. Very appropriate. At the event held in an elegant hotel ballroom downtown, Rebecca transformed into someone I barely recognized, confident, charming, working the room with practiced ease. I stayed close enough to appear together but far enough away to let her shine, sipping sparkling water and smiling at strangers who glanced my way. During her brief acceptance speech, Rebecca again omitted any mention of my involvement in her business journey. I'd expected it this time, so the sting was duller, more a familiar ache than a fresh wound. Impressive young woman, came a deep voice beside me as Rebecca concluded her remarks to enthusiastic applause. I turned to find a strikingly handsome man in his early 30s watching my daughter with open interest. His tailored suit spoke of wealth, but it was the confident set of his shoulders and the calculating intelligence in his eyes that commanded attention. Thank you, I replied. She's my daughter. Something flickered across his features. Reassessment, perhaps surprise. David Harrington, he said, extending his hand. Harrington Development Group. The name was familiar. One of Boston's old money real estate families whose buildings dotted the city skyline. Grace Foster, I responded, shaking his hand. His eyes performed a quick, subtle inventory, taking in my dress, my shoes, my lack of expensive jewelry before he asked, "And what do you do, Miss Foster?" "I'm in the service industry," I answered vaguely, having learned that people responded better to ambiguity than the truth of my multiple working-class jobs. "Mom." Rebecca appeared suddenly at my side, slightly breathless with excitement. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Her attention immediately shifted to David, and I witnessed the instantaneous chemistry between them, like watching a match strike against phosphorus. David Harrington. He introduced himself, his entire demeanor shifting to something more animated and engaging than the polite interest he'd shown me. "Rebecca Foster," my daughter replied, extending her hand with a graceful flourish. "Rebecca's closet." "The woman of the hour," David smiled, holding her hand a moment longer than necessary. "I was just telling your mother how impressive your accomplishments are." Rebecca beamed, and in that moment I became invisible again. A prop in their meeting story rather than an active participant. I watched as David smoothly maneuvered the conversation away from me, asking Rebecca detailed questions about her business model, her expansion plans, her vision for the future. Within 20 minutes he had secured her phone number and extracted a promise to tour her boutique personally the following week. Within 3 days they were on their first date. Within 2 weeks they were inseparable. The whirlwind romance progressed with dizzying speed. Rebecca's calls to me, already infrequent, became even rarer. Our occasional dinners were cancelled or rescheduled to accommodate David's spontaneous plans. When we did meet, David dominated the conversation, speaking extensively about his real estate projects, family connections, and future ambitions. His interest in me extended only to cursory questions that inevitably circled back to potential advantages for him. Your friend is a paralegal, you mentioned? At which firm? Do they handle commercial real estate transactions? I began to notice troubling patterns. David constantly showcased Rebecca to his social circle but kept her separate from his family. He lavished her with expensive gifts, designer handbags, a platinum watch, creating debts of gratitude she could never truly repay. He'd drop casual criticisms disguised as helpful suggestions. That inventory system you're using is so outdated, sweetie. Let me show you how real businesses operate. Every attempt I made to discuss these concerns with Rebecca was deflected. He's just trying to help me succeed, Mom, she'd say defensively. David comes from a whole different world. He's teaching me how things work at that level. And what about his family? I asked once. Have you met them yet? A flicker of discomfort crossed her face. They travel a lot. I'm sure I'll meet them when the time is right. 4 months into their relationship, I learned of their engagement through a Facebook status update. No phone call. No advance notice. Just a perfectly staged photo of Rebecca's hand sporting a diamond ring that must have cost more than my yearly income, captioned, I said yes to forever with my soulmate. #future Mrs. Harrington. I stared at the image for a full minute before calling her, my hands shaking. Were you going to tell me? I asked when she answered. Oh. Mom, yes, I was going to call you tonight, Rebecca said, her voice high with excitement. David surprised me with the proposal yesterday and we've been celebrating with his friends. Isn't it wonderful? It's very sudden, I managed. When you know, she replied dismissively. We're thinking about a spring wedding. Something elegant but intimate. The next day, I received a text that wasn't meant for me. Your mom can't be seated with my family at dinner. My parents would be mortified. We'll put her at the back table with the vendor staff. My heart froze. The text was from David, clearly intended for Rebecca. I waited for her response, for her defense of me. None came. Instead, 7 minutes later, my phone chimed with a message clearly meant to distract me. Mom, can you believe the wedding planner wants to charge us extra for rose gold flatware? This planning is so stressful. I replied with non-committal support, the betrayal sitting like ice in my stomach. 2 weeks later, after numerous unreturned calls, I visited Rebecca's apartment unannounced, worried about her increasingly distant behavior. She wasn't home, but her laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. I had never invaded my daughter's privacy before, but something, instinct perhaps or mounting fear, propelled me forward. The screen displayed a detailed wedding planning spreadsheet with multiple tabs. My finger hesitated over the trackpad before clicking on one innocuously labeled Phone. Mom Management. The tab expanded to reveal a detailed strategy document for handling me during the wedding process. Bullet points outlined how to limit Grace's visibility during key moments, schedule her for non-essential vendor meetings to make her feel included, and techniques for extracting maximum financial contribution while maintaining boundary control. The final note in a cell highlighted yellow contained David's comment. Remember the end goal: full financial support with minimal interference. After the wedding, distance becomes easier to maintain. I stepped back from the computer, physically ill from what I'd discovered. This wasn't just Rebecca excluding me in the moment. This was a calculated, long-term strategy to extract what value they could from me before cutting me out of their lives entirely. That night, I called Sarah for the first time in months. I need your help, I said when she answered. And I need you to not ask questions yet. Whatever you need, she replied without hesitation. If I were to activate my majority ownership in Rebecca's closet, what exactly would that mean? Sarah's silence lasted 3 beats. It would mean you could initiate a full audit, freeze assets, review all contracts, and potentially assume operational control. Grace, what's happening? I'm setting up a contingency plan, I explained, my voice steadier than I felt. One I hope never to use. I needed options. Protection. And for the first time in 22 years, I needed to put myself first. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Sarah and I prepared meticulously, gathering financial records, documenting unauthorized investor meetings Rebecca had conducted without my knowledge, and compiling evidence of funds being diverted from the boutique into personal accounts. We discovered that David had been advising Rebecca to restructure the business in ways that would have eventually diluted my ownership to nothing. A plan they intended to execute shortly after the wedding. Are you sure you want to do this? Sarah asked during our final meeting 3 days before the ceremony. Once we initiate this, there's no going back. I stared at the stack of manila envelopes on her dining room table, each containing irrefutable evidence and legal notices prepared for different recipients. I'm not doing anything yet, I corrected her. I'm just making sure everything is ready. And what's the trigger? Sarah pressed. What makes you decide to press the button? I thought about the years of sacrifice, the gradual erosion of respect, the calculated mom management strategy, and now the wedding ultimatum. I'll know when it happens, I said quietly. The confrontation on the beach, their demand for $50,000 with the alternative of being shut out of their lives forever, was the final confirmation that my daughter and her husband viewed me solely as a resource to be drained and discarded. The moment I whispered, "You forgot one thing," and watched fear flash across their faces, I knew exactly what needed to happen. After excusing myself to powder my nose, I walked past the resort's lavish bathroom and continued along the wooden boardwalk that led away from the reception area. Finding a secluded alcove between 2 sand dunes, I sat on a weathered bench facing the ocean. The sunset painted the water in shades of amber and gold as gentle waves lapped at the shore. Nature's beauty stood in stark contrast to the ugliness I'd just experienced. My hands didn't tremble as I pulled out my phone and composed a simple text to Sarah. Sandcastle time. 3 dots appeared immediately, followed by her response. Understood. Packages delivering now. Legal team standing by. Are you okay? I will be, I typed back. I remained on that bench for exactly 7 minutes, breathing deeply, saying goodbye to the dream of what my relationship with Rebecca could have been. Then I slipped my phone back into my purse and returned to the reception, taking a circuitous route that allowed me to observe without being immediately seen. The wedding coordinator was the first to approach David's parents at their prominent table near the dance floor. She handed them a sealed envelope with professional courtesy. This was delivered for you, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington. Similar scenes played out across the venue as staff members discreetly delivered identical envelopes to specific guests. All boutique investors David had secretly brought in without my knowledge or consent. I watched as confusion gave way to concern as documents were extracted and examined. David's father was the first to react, his face flushing crimson as he abruptly stood, napkin falling forgotten to the floor. He scanned the room with narrowed eyes before locating his son near the bar and striding purposefully in that direction. Simultaneously, a synchronized symphony of electronic alerts began chiming across the venue, Rebecca's business email address sending automated notifications to everyone connected to the boutique's operations. The messages, crafted by Sarah's legal team, announced an immediate company audit, asset freeze, and suspension of all business activities pending investigation of financial irregularities. I stepped out from my secluded vantage point, moving quietly along the perimeter of the reception. David was now engaged in an intense whispered argument with his father, whose finger jabbed repeatedly at the documents in his hand. Rebecca stood frozen beside them, her perfect makeup unable to conceal her growing panic. When she spotted me, Rebecca broke away, rushing toward me with desperation in her eyes. Mom, what is happening? Everyone's getting these crazy emails about the boutique. Not crazy, I corrected calmly. Accurate. I'm exercising my rights as majority owner. David appeared at her side, his practiced charm entirely evaporated. What have you done? He hissed, keeping his voice low to avoid drawing more attention. I've protected my investment, I replied, maintaining the same even tone. Did you really think I wouldn't discover your plans to cut me out? The unauthorized investors? The diverted funds? Rebecca's face paled beneath her makeup. We can explain all of that, she stammered. It was just temporary, to build capital for expansion. Into David's side project, I finished for her. The South End development that somehow received a $200,000 investment from Rebecca's closet reserves without the majority owner's knowledge or approval. David's eyes darted nervously to where his parents were now speaking with another couple, both holding the damning documents. You have no idea what you've done, he warned. My family has connections you can't imagine. Is that why your father looks ready to disown you right now? I asked, nodding toward the elder Harrington whose gestures had become increasingly agitated. I wonder how he feels about his son using a small boutique as a personal piggy bank for a failed real estate venture. The horror dawning on their faces confirmed what I already knew. They had underestimated me completely. They had seen only what they wanted to see. An aging woman with working-class roots who could be manipulated, used, and discarded. Mom, Rebecca whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks, ruining her carefully applied makeup. You have to fix this. Please. Everything we've worked for will be destroyed. Everything I worked for, I corrected gently. Everything I sacrificed for. Everything I built that you claimed as your sole achievement. Rebecca reached for my arm, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. I'm your daughter. Your only child. You can't do this to me. For a moment my resolve wavered. The maternal instinct to protect, to shield, to sacrifice still powerful after all these years. But then I remembered the mom management spreadsheet, the casual cruelty of their plans, and the ultimatum delivered over champagne flutes. I already did, I said softly. You both showed me exactly who you are and what I'm worth to you. I simply believed you. David's phone began ringing, his father calling from across the room. Rebecca's phone chimed with more email alerts as the legal process initiated by Sarah continued to unfold. Around us, the elegant reception was devolving into clusters of confused guests and urgent conversations. We can offer you more than 50,000, David bargained desperately. Double, triple, whatever you want. I shook my head. This was never about money. As I turned to leave, Rebecca gave one last desperate plea. Mom, please. Just tell me how to fix this. I paused, looking back at my daughter in her designer wedding dress that cost more than a year of my mortgage payments. You can't, I said simply. Some things once broken stay broken. I walked away then, moving with unhurried dignity through the chaos unfolding behind me. Staff members stepped aside respectfully, perhaps sensing that I was not to be stopped or questioned. At the edge of the property, I slipped off my uncomfortable heels, carrying them in one hand as I made my way onto the public beach that stretched for miles along the coast. The setting sun painted my path in gold as I walked toward the horizon, each step lighter than the last. For the first time in decades, I was free from the weight of thankless sacrifice, free from the burden of being needed only for what I could provide rather than who I was. 3 miles down the beach, where Sarah waited in her sensible sedan, a new future awaited. One that included plans for a small boutique of my own in a quieter part of town, catering to women who valued substance over status. Not a replacement for what I had lost, but something entirely new. Something just for me. I never looked back at the gleaming resort or the wreckage I had left behind. I had given Rebecca everything I had to give. Now finally it was my turn. If this story of sweet revenge had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when Grace whispered, "You forgot one thing" at the beach wedding, knowing her perfectly planned revenge was about to unfold. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.